Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where we're going to be talking about a stock that is up 163% year to date and 60% in the last 6 months. Is that the biggest story of the day? You bet. Here on the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
It's official. It is official.
Welcome
we missed
back,
you yesterday.
That's right. He is Pete Najarian. I am not on a plane at this moment, so able to be here with you. Sooner or later, Pete, they're going to get an internet that is indeed fast enough to do it from the plane, but not yet, unless you have Musk's Skylink, and I wasn't on a plane equipped with that. Starlink.
If you're on it. By the way, if you're on a passenger plane and you're taping this on that plane, you might have a few guys next to you going, "Hey, buddy."
hey, John, what are you doing over there? Shut up.
Yeah.
We're broadcasting live.
It's
well, again, he is Pete Najarian. I'm Jon Najarian. We appreciate you joining us. We're going to cover some stocks today. And we always kick it off with the macro minute. And I led in with that cold open. The macro minute, Pete, I'm going to say is NVIDIA, because it is the stock that's up 163% year to date, 60% in the last 6 months. And keep in mind, this is a stock that touched those $1 trillion thresholds that so many people told Pete and I years ago. That, well, the law of big numbers, you can't be $1 trillion stock, which, again, still to this day, Pete, just makes me shake my head. These guys know nothing that say crap like that, because it has nothing to do with that whatsoever.
Well, the law of large numbers is idiotic, and I'll throw one other one that's a moronic thing to ever say. Sell in May and go away. You'd have missed 600 points in the S&P, you idiots, if you listen to that. Anyway, that being said, John, for my macro minute, I'm going to give you this. It was slow yesterday. I mean, slow. We were averaging early part of August about 60 million a day, 60 million a day. We are now averaging around 50 million a day. Yesterday, we traded 37 million option contracts. So a little bit quiet. Why is it quiet? Because we've got NVIDIA's earnings after the market closed tomorrow, and everybody wants to wait. Everybody's waiting. Just like last week when we were waiting on the Fed. Now we're waiting on NVIDIA.
Yep. And it's going to be an interest. It's, by the way, folks, after the close tomorrow. So it's not just tomorrow, the 28th. It's after the bell, not before the bell, unless they screw up. Companies have done that from time to time. NVIDIA is not likely to screw that up. But, I mean, Pete, I'm pretty sure Oracle, Microsoft,
we've seen it.
You know, I can think of a host of really big tech stocks that you'd think there's no way these guys are going to, blow it, and somebody hits a fat finger and sends it. But I doubt that they're going to do that, and they will put up earnings tomorrow, and Pete and I can opine more about that tomorrow. All right, let's talk, Pete, a little bit about fantastic futures. For me today, it is Ether or Ethereum. The Ethereum market under pressure. Significant decline. Apparently, even in the ETFs of Ethereum, Pete, there are sellers. And yesterday, about $13.5 million worth of Ethereum. That's not a huge number, folks, but that is an exit rather than an addition. And as you know, it always takes two to make a trade. And so we probably had people buying, perhaps, who knows, 50 or $100 million worth of Ethereum, maybe more. But the net result was that 13.2 million were sold yesterday, and that further pressure on Ethereum.
John, I'm going to have to go right back to the volatility index because people are asking me about it almost every day. As a matter of fact, yesterday I had the opportunity to be on Schwab Network. We talked about it there as well, because when you look at the volatility index, it's basically trading at 16 as we speak. Now, a lot of people would say, well, it's come down a lot and this, that, and the other. And yes, it could bounce up, which it's done a little bit of, but not very much. And I can tell you this, the new range, in my opinion, is 15 to 18. And here we are sitting at 16. where should we really be right now if it wasn't for the emotion of what's going on? And obviously NVIDIA being a very big, very important earnings tomorrow night. It's amazing, John, but if you're at a 16, that means a 1% move. You know where we are today on the S&P 500? Flat as a pancake. So there's a lot of reasons why actually we're probably a little inflated at a 16 VIX, and maybe we should be a little closer to 14 or something like that. I think that's why that range at 1480 to 18 really stands up pretty good. And we'll see how long we stay in this range, because it's been a wild summer, John, in June, July, August, now the end of August. A lot of big movement, but we were locked at 12, if people remember that, back in May and June. We were sitting at a 12, what seemed like forever.
Yeah, it did. But it never really lasts forever, Pete.
No.
And certainly the jump in volatility through 65 doesn't last at all. It goes like that. Yeah. All right, let's talk about Trip.com, Pete, because Trip.com came out with their earnings. This is a Singapore-based company. And if you've not used them, it's a very easy to use website. I check it occasionally. And they came back with strong demand from cross-border travel, meaning that people are going international more. And it was trading significantly higher. Second quarter growth because of that strong international demand. And TCOM is the symbol for this one. What do you think of Trip.com versus Expedia, Pete, or versus Booking.com?
These guys are absolutely crushing it. I think they're probably in front of everybody, John. When I look at them and I take a look at the reservation revenue up 20% year over year, and as you and I both, I think, feel the same way about this, I love to see the year over year. I want to see, where were you a year ago? Where are you now? Are you making progress, or have you gotten slammed and now all of a sudden you're just trying to beat what's out there and what they tell you is going to be the next number, and yet it's a long distance negatively from where it was a year ago? That's not the case here. It's up 20% year over year. That's big. They talked about demand. We know that's there. It's an absolute monster. And when I look at the PE trading at a 15, this thing's got a absolutely beautiful balance sheet, John. They've got $29 billion in cash over debt. That tells me a lot about, show me the money. They got the money to show you. So everywhere I look, I think even though it's up 8% today, this is a stock that should be a lot closer to the 52-week high than it is. And it's still a good 12, 14 bucks away from there. I'm very bullish on this name.
Yeah, there's a chart that Jared just put up there, folks, of the big jump today. And beginning of the year, $35 stock. May, 58. That's the high. And then bled all the way back down, Pete. But with this 8% rally, let's call it 46 bucks a share or something like that. Like you said, $12 off the 52-week high. Turnover nearly double what a normal day would be. So yeah, very interesting trade out of this one, Pete. And I think worth watching. All right, how about Ryanair? We'll stick with travel, Pete, and talk about one of the deepest discount air carriers. You've got EasyJet, you've got Spirit. There are a host of these super, super low fare airlines, but they tend to ding you pretty hard for anything. And apparently their CEO, Michael O'Leary, says that investors are now getting ready to spend and starting to spend more aggressively. In other words, the cutbacks they had were because they, at least in his mind, fares were too high. He brought fares down a bit more revenue came in, and now he's saying he thinks they can start inching their way back up, Pete. What do you think?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, but when you look at Trip.com and then all of a sudden you look over at the next one, which is, okay, what do these guys do? They're the travel. They're the ones who actually produce all of that. So I think that the CEO is dead on. He did a great job of navigating what was an area where they were concerned about how far were they going to have to cut fares to get people out there. Well, it turned out they didn't have to cut as much as they thought. So that's obviously a good thing. This is another one, John, where it's pretty cheap. I mean, other than the fact that they make you stand and hold on to one of those things like you're in a subway. No, I'm just kidding. But it is a big discount, like you were saying. But it's stabilized, and I think this is one where it's up, 5% or something like that today. It's long ways from its 52-week highs. I don't expect it to run up to those anytime soon, but I think under the circumstances, this is a really nice what we're seeing here in terms of what they were absolutely able to sell going into the summer season, which sometimes can be really low. It wasn't as bad. So I think that gives them a nice sort of an upward move as we get to the second half of the year, especially when we get into the holidays.
Well, and to Pete's point here on the relative performance or underperformance of Ryanair, folks, it is down 18.5% year to date after today's rally. Yeah. United, on the other hand, is up 3.25%. So United did much better in the April to June period, Pete, where they booked a lot of people in. These guys had to cut and are still saying that they're going to see about 5% less travel, but not the 10% less that they thought earlier in the year. So, or earlier in this quarter, at least. So at least a bit of good news there. And like I say, the stock's still down pretty hard for the year. All right, let's talk about PODD, Pete, P-O-D-D. The FDA cleared their Insulet Omnipod 5 for type 2 diabetes. Now, there are several ways that people deal with diabetes. One, obviously, is just on fire right now, and that is Ozempic, Mounjaro, all of those drugs that were created for diabetes, and to help people that were overweight from getting too big and then thus putting even more stress on their body and becoming a diabetic. This is for people that already are, Pete, diabetic. And this is good news for those folks. And PODD is seeing a nice pop because of this good news.
Yeah, they're getting a really nice jump, John. The automated insulin delivery system that they've got, it's the first one ever. So the fact that they were able to get there and it goes more efficiently and all of the different positives that come away from this. And by the way, it's both type 1 and type 2, but they're excited to get the type 2 as well. So it's something that I think, keep an eye on this one. I'm not saying it's something you jump on today. It's already made a pretty significant move to the upside off of this, but this is a company that if you like Lilly, if you like any of the big pharma names that are in this space right now, and everybody's been talking about it, whether it's through diabetes or weight loss or however you want to frame it, but these guys are certainly part of that whole world now, and it's going to get people pretty excited. I think someday we're going to see this name really start moving to the upside, and they're not done yet. They have all kinds of different things in the pipeline as far as how they want to introduce medical devices to this whole world. So this could get pretty interesting. I think this is just the start.
Well, it's certainly good for anybody who is facing and having to deal with diabetes, Pete. Yeah. And the fact that the FDA gave them clearance takes a long time to get that, folks. Yeah, so this is not something they just cooked up in a lab and threw it out there. So I think hats off to them and their scientists for getting this to market. All right. Now let's talk, Pete, just for a moment about Cava. This is I guess, Mediterranean restaurant, and the stock is absolutely on fire this year, not today. Today, no pertinent news except that the management team realized that, you know what? End of July, it was an $80 stock. Today, before we finish, and yesterday it hit $128 a share or something like that. From 80 to 128, 40 bucks in a month. So apparently the management team, Pete, decided, you know what? I'm going to lighten up a little bit. I can't blame them. I know what the optics are every time an insider sells, but I think that this is not a stupid move by these guys. And they didn't sell meaningful positions. I think like the CEO sold 5.5% of his stake. So that's not exactly like just whack selling your whole stake out and saying, thanks very much.
John, it's the Middle Eastern Chipotle. I've been to Cava multiple times in my life and thought it was one of the best things I've ever had from a quote unquote fast food, if you want to say that it is. But I will say this, you're 100% correct. By the way, the stock 52-week low, 29 bucks, 52-week high, 128 bucks. That ain't so bad, guys. I mean, this thing has been absolutely on fire. And I think for all the right reasons, because, you look at the blueprint of Chipotle and the path that they took, I think this is one of those names that is going to be very, very similar to that. I've liked it. I have not traded it yet. I've not invested in it. I haven't been a part of it yet, which is foolish on my part because you just talked about some of the numbers there. I mean, 60% here, 80% there, 200% there. This is an absolute monster. But I think one of the issues that people always have, they see insiders sell, they immediately go to, oh, there must be something bad. I don't think that at all in this case. I think you're exactly right. They're taking a little bit off the table, a little bit. The CEO sold 5.5% of his position. So that's not that big of a number. And there are multiple other people within the C-suite that were also selling. I think it was just basically, look, let's just get this out of the way. They probably had some sort of a meeting and said, look, let's take a little money off, even though we believe in our company and everything we're going to do. But at least it gives them a little bit of cash flow. And I think that's the only reason. I don't think they did it for any negative reasons at all. So a pullback, it's probably a reason to maybe think about buying at this point.
And these guys are not just a restaurant play, folks. Like a lot of big restaurants, they have started, not just started, they have been doing it for quite a while, putting their product in grocery stores. So that if you want to buy, a cucumber salad or whatever it is, might be, Pete, on the Mediterranean side, they've got it at a number of grocery stores, and that's just added revenue for them. Not saying it's free. Obviously, the grocery store takes their spiff, but it's just one more way to extend their brand out there.
Yep.
All right. We saw this one, and we thought you guys would get a kick out of it. The Raiders, as Chris Berman would say, Pete, the Raiders. They have a new intro, and we thought you guys would get a kick out of it. They're the only black stadium that I know of anywhere, but in particular in the NFL. And they have the craziest fans. Pete and I have been on, Pete was a Raider. We've been on the planes flying into Oakland back in the day, or down into, what was it, Glendale, wherever,
LA,
Irwindale, or wherever, where the Raiders were playing. Craziest group of fans. I can't believe they let them on planes, Pete, dressed like they were, with the face paint and the skulls and all the rest of it. But take a look at this video, folks. I think you'll get a kick out of this.
A little bit of a welcome, kind of a Sandman sort of a thing, right?
Yep. He flips the coin with, a Raiders Nation on it.
The coin is cool. The
There you
flag
got
is cool.
Buccaneers.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah. Commitment to excellence.
Oh, it's great.
And then the skull face underneath.
I'll tell you what, it's an intimidating start. They still got to play, they still got to close, but they might have the best opener of anybody in the NFL. And Woodson was a stud.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Michigan one, not the Purdue Woodson. This is the Michigan Woodson, and he was one of the better of the players out there, man. That guy was one of those guys that could play every position and return punts, kickoff, and anything you wanted to do, he was on the field. And he knows how to smoke a cigar, too. He's not just
I was going to say, it looks a lot like our intro. I think the Raiders have copied our intro, Pete, of you and I sitting there sipping some bourbon and smoking cigars. But I do think it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. All right.
What do you got? Sports.
Let's jump into this right now. We got the NFL, and I wanted to headline this one, John, Money Machine. And we might hit on this tomorrow, but they have finally approved that PE firms can be investors into the NFL now, into those teams in the NFL. So that's kind of an interesting storyline. I never knew why that was even a big deal, John. I understand a little bit, but overall picture is it makes sense that they would approve, and they did approve of that. But that being said, how about the way the money is flowing right now in the NFL? So we've got quarterbacks that are making anywhere between $50 and $60 million a year. That's crazy. Taking up a fairly big percentage when you consider the fact that $255 million is the number for the salary cap. And these guys are, in some cases, most of them probably call it $55 million. So that pulls back what the rest of the guys are going to be able to get. Well, Justin Jefferson signed a 4-year, I think it was $140 million contract, John. CeeDee Lamb finally got the contract that he wanted. Now, my pushback, and I love CeeDee Lamb, I think he's deserving of any money he wants to get. But I just keep wondering, John, is it that big of a difference between JJ and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy? And these wide receivers are really hitting the bank right now. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So CeeDee Lamb, I think it's somewhere close to what? He had a $38 million signing bonus. So that's pretty amazing. So now who's left? Well, you got Brandon Ayuk. He's a wide receiver for the 49ers. He wants to get paid. I don't know how they're going to do it because San Francisco's still got to get Trent Williams signed. Oh, and by the way, they got a quarterback making under $1 million a year. Meanwhile, guys in college football are getting $2, $3, $4 million a year through NIL. And meanwhile, Brock Purdy's making, let's roll up a little. He's making $1 million. But I mean, John, at some point they got to pay him that too. Jamar Chase from the Bengals, he wants to get paid. Some of these guys are holding out, some of them aren't, but regardless, there's money that has to come to some of these guys, and they're setting this bar up there. If I'm a GM right now, and I hope owners are listening because I'd love to do it, I'm not paying a wide receiver $40 million a year, $35 million a year. I think I can get almost as good for under 20. And I think that's a real number. So I think when you look at this, they need to start figuring this out because the money to two positions on the team, if you combine them, and we're talking about 30 million plus 55 million, 85 million of the 255 on the where they're kind of holding you back. I mean, what do you think, John? How can the NFL keep doing this? Can they, or is this going to finally kind of blow up on them at some point?
Well, as you've talked about, Pete, the players through the collective bargaining agreement, they get 48%. That's nearly a 50-50 cut with the owners. Now, we both know the owners play a little game here. Some of that game is, oh yeah, well, that's of the revenue, but not of the stadium skyboxes and not of, the other things that the owners get that might skew it a little more than 48-52. But let's just say, for instance, they're getting 48% of the pool of money. And Pete said this year it's 255. Well, and next year it'll be more. It's amazing, Pete. One of the things that they've done that's been smart was that they have basically negotiated away the first round and second round and third round draft kids from getting those huge contracts that now the veterans get, and you're only a veteran after your fourth year in the league. I mean, veteran in terms of they're signing them to a 3-year deal with a 1-year option, Pete. And, most teams would be foolish not to exercise that option because, you're locking the kid in for a lot less than he's going to get when he goes to the free agent market, if that happens. I noticed, Pete, that it is the day that we see all the roster cuts come across, and the Tennessee Titans, cut a first-round pick from 2021, Caleb Farley. This guy was the 22nd pick in the draft. Back in the old days, just to put an exclamation point on this, Pete, the 22nd pick in the first round might have got a $30 million contract, $40 million contract. I mean, quarterbacks back then, before they negotiated this away, like Sam Bradford and those guys, they were getting 80 mil, things like that. A top cornerback could have got something like that. And now instead, that guy, they're walking away, they cut him. And I'm betting that they paid him less than 9 mil over the several years that he was in the league, Pete. So, yeah, you're right. I think you can find great players and fill up your roster and keep the players you need to by being more judicious with the cash than just saying, yeah, I guess wide receivers get 40 mil. I think you can do better, and I'm betting somebody like you would do better.
All right. I appreciate that. By the way, NCAA football, we already kicked it off last week, but you weren't here yesterday. But last Saturday, John, they played in Ireland. They were in Dublin, and it was Florida State playing Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech ended up winning that football game. Really close. They kicked a field goal to win it at the end, but they also ran for almost 200 yards against Florida State. They were number 10. I suspect that Florida State is going to drop significantly from that level of ranked number 10 in the country after a loss to somebody who wasn't ranked. So that makes it kind of interesting and makes it a little bit tougher on them. And remember, I was one of the guys, I think you were too, John, but last year when they lost their quarterback, I thought that affected the entire ability of that team to go any further as far as the national championship's concerned. So they were left out. Well, now you've got 12 teams, not 4. So this is just one loss, but this loss might really bite them if Georgia Tech doesn't prove to be really an outstanding football team this year. And they might not be in that 12, but we'll see. Time will tell. Thursday, we've got 2 games, John, in front of us in college football that are actually somewhat interesting and meaningful. The first one, it's me. I'm talking about it, but it's the Gophers against North Carolina because it's ACC Big Ten. It's not the Big Ten playing against somebody, that's a far lower group. And I'll tell you what, that North Carolina is a heck of a football team. I think Mac Brown does a great job year in and year out. John, here's where he's been. Appalachian State, Oklahoma, Tulane, North Carolina, Texas, and back to North Carolina after he spent a few years at ESPN where I actually got to know him. Well, he's a great guy, man. 73 years old. He can still bring it, and he's going to bring his guys up here. I think my Gophers will have their work cut out for them, but I think they can beat them. I think the Gophers did a lot in the offseason to change who they are. But most importantly is also a game that night is Colorado playing North Dakota State. They're playing at Colorado. That's your Colorado, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And Primetime Sanders is finding himself getting into a little bit of hot water right now because he doesn't want to talk to the media. He's ticked off at the media and basically thinks they twist things. And Paul Feinbaum, and I should have grabbed the clip because you would have loved it, but he basically called him a bully and a hypocrite, which means that Paul Feinbaum is not going to have a chance to talk to Neon Dion probably ever again after saying that. But to some degree, he might be right. He doesn't want to do, John. He wants to specifically pick who in the media he's going to talk to. I'm not sure you can do that, but I will say this. North Dakota State, if they're too distracted by what Neon Dion's doing, North Dakota State might bite these guys. I'm not saying they will, but that is one of the very best schools. They were D3 forever, D2, they were D1, and now all of a sudden you look at this school, and these guys are kicking butt, John. So it might be pretty daggone interesting, that game, and that's week 1. That's Thursday at 7 o'clock.
Yep, that's going to be an interesting game, Pete, from the standpoint of, like you say, will Dion, when some reporters and so forth come rushing out to talk to him either before the game or halftime or end of the game, is he going to answer questions? Because he has said to the CBS reporter that was at the Buffalo's practice, I don't answer questions from CBS. Because you said I'm one of the worst coaches in this conference. I'm at the bottom rather than the top. Well, like you said, Pete, he's got to earn it. He brought a lot of flash and a lot of enthusiasm, and I can tell you firsthand from my daughter that you can't get a ticket to Colorado Buffalo football.
Right.
Students can't even get the tickets anymore. I mean, if you didn't get in the lottery and get it early, and she tried, you don't have tickets. Now, I imagine you'll buy them at the game or look around for somebody in the parking lot selling them before the game or whatever. But that's how popular it is. And that's all Dion. That's Dion. That's his son. That is Hunter and all those players that he brought in. But now they got to win. And they got to win more than the games they're supposed to win at the beginning of the year. They got to win the big ones. Last year, they started off with TCU, and that was a big one. This year, you're not starting off with TCU and everybody is lined up on you. They all know what you got, so you better be able to surprise them. And this is not a smash mouth, team like the kind that Michigan runs. This is a team that's based on how Shedeur Sanders is going to do throwing the ball. And if he struggles, that team is going to struggle. The defense is going to be on the field too long and all that kind of stuff. Now, what goes in their favor, Pete, and you know this, and I'll finish up with this, is that they play at altitude. It's a mile high. So people tend to fade in the second half of these games. I've seen it. Even really good teams, when you play there, it doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in. If you've not trained at altitude, you're going to be sucking wind. Now, some guys can suck it up and make it through that, but other teams tend to fade. So if you're just staying with Colorado in the first half, that's going to be a problem for you in the second half. That's my opinion.
They better not sleep on this team. By the way, I misspoke. I said D3. They were never D3. They're D2, and now D1. But North Dakota State is not a team you want to sleep on. I mean, those guys, they come to play just like South Dakota State. And if people overlook them, and I don't say that they are, I think they understand that these guys are pretty damn good. But if they happen to look past them, John, up to the next team and the next team, and they figure this is just a win, that's going to be a problem for them. They'll find themselves in a spot maybe late in the third or fourth quarter where they're going to have to score some touchdowns to win that football game, because North Dakota State is no joke.
No joke, truly. South Dakota, North Dakota, those teams, they live to play for those fans. They don't put 55,000 in arenas, but some of them are playing in dome stadiums with like 17,000, and it's deafening. Because they get some good players. Just take a look at NFL rosters and you'll see it. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. Pete and I will be back tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. So make sure you tune in for both, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and stay tuned for 3 at 3 p.m. later today. Bang.